This is Binghamton Now on News Radio 1290 WNBF Binghamton and WNBF.com.
I'm Bob Joseph. This is Binghamton Now for Thursday, September 19th, 2024. More calls, more topics, more of what you listen to Binghamton Now for. It's coming right up between now and noon. Give me a call at 607-772-1290. WNBF. Welcome to the wide world of radio, where one person speaking into a microphone in an underground bunker somewhere in North America can make his voice heard to a potential global audience of 8 billion people, thanks to the free WNBF app and the miracle of the internet, WNBF.com. We're also on air, 92.1 FM, 1290 AM. So we're here for you. It's a community service provided by Town Square Media. WNBF, part of our community for nearly a century. And we are proud to be at your service with information and entertainment and more, 7 days a week. Without any further ado, let's take caller number one on this Thursday. Good morning, Gary from Binghamton's West Side. You're on the air.
Hello, Bob. Hey, I just wanted to say you had a great show yesterday. It was fantastic. There was some conspiracy theories put out there, mostly political. I have a conspiracy theory that I would like to share, and if you could correct me with facts, I would love that. So we have a epidemic in our country, Bob, that really not too many people are talking about. Some people are, but it's what we feed everyone in this country. When you go to the supermarket, how healthy is it? All our foods have sugar in them. They have harmful seed oils, canola, sunflower, all of that list. And there's other things that they put in there, ultra-processed foods, right? So here's my theory, Bob, is that somehow the government got involved with people who make medications, the pharmacy industry, many years ago. And what they're doing is, this is a conspiracy theory, is that they are getting us just sick enough with the food that they feed us that we have to take their medications to stay alive. And that's what they're doing. If you look at 1 out of 3 kids, Bob, kids are diabetic or pre-diabetic. This is all from, and you may dispute this, R.F. Kennedy Jr. He just gave a speech that I watched, and this information was on there. Autism. In the year 2000, 1 out of 1,500 kids were diagnosed. Now it's 1 out of 36. Young adult cancers are up 79%. And 1 in 5 people have fatty liver disease. Well, back in the day, if you had fatty liver disease, you were in late stage of alcoholism. I mean, that was it. So we've got all of these diseases that are happening, and it's only happening in America. It's not happening around the rest of the world. This is unique to the United States of America. And, you know, I'm saying it's sugar. I'm saying it's seed oils. I'm saying it's ultra-processed food that's causing this. And really, nobody's talking about it. What do you think, Bob?
Well, it's an interesting theory, and I can't disprove it. And I sometimes have thought along the same lines that when it comes to public health and nutrition, some of the biggest industries in this country, agriculture and healthcare, the pharmaceutical industry, I have wondered the way things operate in the USA today. It makes sometimes the policies that are in place and have been in place for decades don't seem to make a lot of sense. It doesn't seem to me that the federal government, for all of the public service campaigns and educational efforts, doesn't seem sometimes that the federal government is doing enough to properly educate everybody of every age about proper nutrition, proper exercise, also working with the food industry, both on the agricultural side and also food manufacturers, to develop healthier foods. Yes, to feed hundreds of millions of people, you do need a certain level of processing. But I personally don't believe that we need high fructose corn syrup in virtually everything we consume, including, it's one thing you expect it, I guess, in soft drinks and things like that, beverages, and maybe desserts, but look at the ingredient labels. High fructose corn syrup and a lot of other things that clearly are no good for you, and they're in virtually every product in the supermarket, except for possibly the part of the supermarket where they can sell items branded as organic at a premium price. But even those things I don't trust. You can slap you can slap a label on something and say it's organic or healthier. You don't have to prove it.
This is what I've heard, and I don't know if it's true or not. I heard that organic means that it was not sprayed with Roundup, glyphosate, or whatever the term is, right? But they can spray other stuff to keep the bugs off it, but it's just not sprayed with Roundup.
Yeah, I don't know if that part is true.
Okay,
it could be. I don't know. Let's put it this way: as much as I am concerned about a lot of conspiracy theories that sometimes come up on this program or online, I do have some questions, and it's sometimes scary for me to think that when RFK Jr. is talking about some things, he actually may have a point. One of the reasons why RFK Jr. isn't taken seriously by many people is because he has a unique personality. Of course, as we all do. But the background, what we know about him and his life over the decades, makes us wonder, or makes us have a lot of questions. It still doesn't mean some of the things he says aren't correct. But, if you look at other things.
He has a concern for Americans. It seems like.
I think he has a concern, unfortunately, given what we know about, or what we think we know, thanks to the media, about RFK Jr. and his public and private life. Many of us, I think, tend to be automatically skeptical of much of what he says. But again, as I mentioned a moment ago, that doesn't mean he's incorrect, at least on some things. He may be.
Thank you. Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that.
I try to keep an open mind about everything, and including even conspiracy theories, because in the end, who knows? Who knows about anything?
There's usually some truth in conspiracy theories, usually something.
Yes, there's usually at least a kernel of truth.
Right. And but the sugar in our food, Bob, like if you look at ingredient lists, right? So you'll see sugar, you'll see high fructose corn syrup, but then there's dozens of other names for sugar that you don't even know it's sugar. Right? You know, what the heck is this, right? But it's sugar. I eat nuts, Bob, once in a while, and all of a sudden I look, and now they're covering them in sugar. Why? Because they want me to keep eating them.
Well, that's another thing.
It's the most addictive substance probably on Earth.
The U.S. food industry has, I think, led the way on this planet of finding new ways to get us hooked on these delightful snack foods. Whether it's salty snacks made, I don't know, in Kirkwood. There's a company. Now, that company...
I know that place pretty good.
Yeah, Go ahead. That company, the parent company, PepsiCo, they're geniuses. They make billions and billions and billions of salty snacks every year at plants around the world. And at the same time, in different plants, they're producing billions and billions and billions of bottles of sometimes sugar sweetened or high fructose corn sweetener or artificially sweetened products for us to wash them down with. It's in terms of marketing, these are geniuses. On the beverage side, we'll get you to drink more Pepsi, more Diet Pepsi, more Pepsi Zilch or whatever they market it. Here's a new one come out, whatever it is, Crystal, I don't even know what they call it now, Happy Juice or whatever. It's clear because the previous brand they had wouldn't cut it against Coke's Sprite. So they do all these things on the one side of the business. At the same time, they're churning out across the street, figuratively, lots of salty snacks. I mean, it's genius. And a lot of those salty snacks have been carefully designed. They have not just a flavor, but even a crunch profile designed to be addictive. And that's why, as they once said, when marketing their salty potato chips, I think the catchphrase, which I believe now is dropped because it's politically incorrect, you can't eat just one. No, because the way we design these chips, not just with the exact right level of salt and the exact thinness and the mouthfeel and the crunch, you can't eat just one. It's
Absolutely
I'm not saying those salty snacks are as addictive as fentanyl or cigarettes, but maybe they are.
Because there's a receptor in the brain that
it's pleasure.
That it sets off. It's a pleasure sensor, Bob, and we all love pleasure. I know I do, right? And so,
well, and let's face it, there aren't many things in life that bring pleasure. I mean, some things, and it's sad that you go to the supermarket aisle because maybe you're not getting enough pleasure in other aspects of your life. So it's like, well, it was a rough day, so I think I'm going to go home and have myself a bag of salty snacks and wash it down with a
pint of ice cream.
Yeah, and I worked hard this week, so I think I deserve a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Now, there's something. And look at the nutrition facts on a pint of Ben & Jerry's. And it's so bad that the way they put it on a pint of Ben & Jerry's, the nutrition information is cut in quarters. So 1/4 of a container, because who do you know, Gary, who will sit down and eat exactly 1/4 of a pint container of ice cream? But that's how they have it listed on the nutrition facts, because if they put the actual what they know to be a standard serving, I know people who will sit down and eat half a container of Ben & Jerry's, or if they're especially depressed, they might eat the whole container in one sitting. Shouldn't.
I've done that.
Well,
I've done it.
I've done it on more than one occasion.
Good.
Well, it is so good. And even Ben & Jerry's now sometimes, since they have become part of the conglomerate known as Unilever, even they have started to substitute less healthy ingredients compared to when Jen and Barry started the thing in their garage next to their Volkswagen. I mean, look at the ingredients. Take a close look. Some things.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, some things are still whole milk, but look, liquid sugar and some of the other stuff.
Liquid sugar. Are you kidding? Hey, Bob, here's one thing I'd like to say too. You mentioned like serving sizes, right? So the Ben & Jerry's, they cut it into quarters. So, when you look at it, you're looking at 1/4 a cup, right? Here's one. I challenge your listeners to go into your kitchen now and grab out, how like when you make eggs in the morning and you spray your frying pan with the spray stuff, right? Like the fake butter or whatever it is, right? Okay. It says 0 fat on the container, right? But if you look at it, that is like 1/200th of a spray. You just got to spritz it for like for a 1/4 of a second, and then you get that. If you spray it just regular, you're getting fat, you're getting calories, you're getting all of these things. Look at the serving sizes on those things where you spray. It's unbelievable. It's crazy. Isn't it ridiculous?
It is. It's totally ridiculous.
Right, and people don't look at it because, we're in a hurry. And we got kids at home and stuff like this. Look, I get it. It's hard to eat healthy. It really is. It's so much easier for convenience, right? But the food companies know that too.
Here's a nutrition label from Ben & Jerry's. Oh, okay. Now they say it's 3 servings per container. Maybe they've changed it. It used to be 4 servings per container. Maybe somebody, at least looking online for chocolate chip cookie dough. Oh, this is a different one. It's for one of their core flavors, which I think that's one of the few that actually is cut down to less than 16 ounces. Let me see if I can find one that's more accurate.
The core flavors, they put something right in the middle of the thing.
Because
it's delicious.
Well, of course it's delicious.
I know.
It's delicious and nutritious. Let me see if I can find... I'm having difficulty finding the label example.
Well, you try to find it. If I don't mind, I'm not an expert on this, but seed oils were developed back in the early last century, right? And it was machine oil. That's what it was. And they had such an excess of this, they figured, what can we do with this? And they said, well, let's try to sell it to the public and have them eat it.
Sure.
And that's what they've done.
Yep.
It's crazy. People don't know this.
Well, here's for Ben & Jerry's vanilla ice cream, and apparently a pint. So apparently they now, if you look at this thing on the internet, now consider a pint to be 3 servings instead of 4. So maybe that's a little closer to reality. If you ate that whole pint container, 990 calories. Saturated fat, 42 grams. That's 210% of the daily value you're supposed to aim for. So that's more than double.
Arteries.
Yeah. Cholesterol, nearly 100%. Just so if you ate, and I hope you don't today, eat a full pint of Ben & Jerry's vanilla, you'd get nearly the entire 300 milligram allotment for cholesterol. So don't eat anything else with cholesterol. The added sugar part, first of all, total carbohydrates in the pint is 86 grams. 63 grams of that is added sugar, which is 126% of your daily value. And I'll say this about vanilla, it's lower calorie than some of the other flavors that have the mix-ins with chocolate chunks and nuts and other things. So, and again, I'm not dissuading people from eating ice cream or anything else, but you have to be aware. And same with delicious salty snacks. Hey, I admit, my favorite salty snack, I think, is Sun Chips, made by that company in Kirkwood. But they're, in my view, the original Sun Chip is so delightful that it would be very easy for me to sit there, and I think the bags now, because of shrinkflation, are down to maybe 7 ounces. So it would be easy for me to actually consume at least half the bag in about 15 minutes if I wasn't paying attention. Just because they're good. I'm not judging right now the health characteristics, but I think even the top nutritionist at Frito-Lay would say eating half a bag of Sun Chips is not healthy eating.
They say everything in moderation, which
exactly.
is not true either, and that's not true.
But that's the government line. See, that gets back to, I think, the initial issue you brought up as a possible conspiracy theory, because you see every
food pyramid.
Sure, I was just going to say the food pyramid was reinvented.
Right.
Reinvented.
Turn it upside down. That's how you should eat. Turn it upside down and eat that way.
Yep. So it's...
Well, thanks for letting me get that out there, Bob.
Thank you.
And, you know what? I love the Frito Bandito. He was one of my favorites.
Can't say that, though. It's politically incorrect.
Is it? Okay.
It is.
The Frito Bandit?
He's no. You can't even say that.
He's not alive anymore.
No.
They shot him.
He's
They
gone.
shot him.
Politically
They put him
incorrect.
in jail. He's in jail.
So it's lucky they weren't forced to change the brand name by pressure groups. But the Bandito has been retired because that whole line of thought was inappropriate. Appreciate your call. Yeah, food for thought on this Thursday morning. I'm Bob Joseph Live. You're listening to Binghamton Now on 92.1 FM, 1290 AM, streaming at WNBF.com. The 2024 Walk to End Alzheimer's Southern Tier is coming up in a little over a week. It'll be held in Tioga County. Joining us now to talk about the event is Kristen Fada from Brookdale Castle Gardens in Vestal. Good morning.
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Well, thanks for joining us this morning to talk about the event, which will be coming up in just a little over a week at the beautiful Hickories Park in the town of Owego. Tell us a little background about the event and why this is important and why you're hoping more people in our community will get involved.
Yes, thank you so much. The Walk to End Alzheimer's is the world's largest fundraiser for Alzheimer's care, support, and research. While there is no registration fee for the walk, all participants and teams are encouraged to fundraise. The funds raised through the Walk to End Alzheimer's ensure the programs and services provided by the Alzheimer's Association are free to all who need them, in addition to funding research and advocacy efforts leading toward a cure. There are nearly 7 million Americans living with Alzheimer's disease. It's a leading cause of death in the United States. And additionally, more than 11 million family members and friends provide care to people living with Alzheimer's and other dementias. In New York State alone, there are more than 426, big number.
Yes, sometimes the big numbers can be a bit overwhelming.
It's staggering even when I look at them. Over 426,500 people in New York State alone living with the disease. It's just a staggering number.
It is when we hear these numbers, whether it's looking at the state-by-state numbers or the total numbers around the United States, we know how many people are affected directly by it, and so many other people are indirectly affected as far as helping family members or friends who are dealing with this. And so ultimately, when you take all that into account, millions of people across New York and across the country are touched one way or another by Alzheimer's.
Yes, and unfortunately, there is still no cure, though we have made great strides in prolonging the lives of some of our loved ones. I am affected personally as well, Bob. So I have a grandmother on the journey, and my family has been touched by it and experiencing it and sharing that with others and normalizing the conversation surrounding Alzheimer's and dementias overall is a passion of mine. And I do work hard to support that here at Brookdale Castle Gardens with the families we serve.
What else should people know about the event that is coming up on Saturday, September 28th?
They definitely need to know that we do have our website up and running. To register, they should go to alz.org/CNYWALK to make sure that they can register their team. We would love to see as much participation as possible. As you mentioned, it's at the beautiful Hickories Park, and we've been so fortunate in the past with beautiful weather. The venue opens at 9. There's going to be an array of folks there to help talk through different options and supports along with the Alzheimer's Association team. And then open ceremonies start at 10 o'clock with the walk immediately following.
So are children able to participate in the walk with their parents?
We love to have all ages, and even some of our furry friends have joined us. On walk day, participants actually carry various colors of flowers, each representing their personal connection to the disease. Caregivers are yellow. Someone living with Alzheimer's or other dementias carry blue. Someone who has lost a loved one to the disease carry purple. And then there are those that just are there for general support, and they carry orange. And then there's one special white flower that is shared by our hopeful first survivor. And this year we have something special we're cooking up that we plan to have it be pretty impactful. So we're looking for as many folks to join us as possible.
So the Walk to End Alzheimer's, the Southern Tier Walk, will be taking place in just over a week. That'll be on September 28th at the Hickories Park in the town of Owego. Please give the website address again for people who didn't catch it if they'd like more information or if they would like to register for the upcoming event.
That is alz.org/CNYWALK.
Kristen Fada from Brookdale Castle Gardens in Vestal, thank you so much for getting the word out. And one thing I noticed on the website, it's a rain or shine event, so even if there's a bit of rain on September 28th, the walk will be held, although if the weather's really bad, then a decision would be made not to hold the event. But most likely, especially given the way the weather's been around here, the weather probably is going to be conducive for this year's event.
We're going to cross our fingers and hope that we have just as beautiful weather as we have the last few years. And I appreciate your time, Bob.
Kristen, thanks for joining us. I hope you have a great day.
You as well. Take care.
It's 940 WNBF. We're here serving the community. We get the word out about upcoming events. And, of course, news. Yes, where news breaks first on air at 92.1 FM and 1290 AM and online, WNBF.com. If you want to know what's going on around here, check out our website for more original reporting and stories you may not find elsewhere, WNBF.com. It's Thursday morning. Phone lines are open again at 607-772-1290. Let's stick to the issues. This program is for the Stick to the Issues crowd. So if you have some issues for Binghamton and beyond, go ahead. Make that call. 607-772-1290. You're listening to Binghamton Now on WNBF. Binghamton Now continuing at 9:44. Let's go out to the great state of Colorado where it's 7:44. Brian in Creede, Colorado. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Bob?
I am well. How's everything in Creede?
Good. It's okay. It's quiet. That's what I wanted. I talked to you one other time. I was the guy that was living on Harding Avenue when I retired.
In Endwell?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice neighborhood.
Yeah, it is. Now, your last caller was talking about food and the problems with food. And he touched something that I've been reading about and looking at for a long time. Now, the thing that you have to remember is we're hardwired as humans to crave sugar and salt. To give you an idea, and we're in the olden days when our fathers opened up new territories, they needed two things. They needed a good seaport, such as New York City, and they needed access to salt. Hence the New York salt mines upstate, where they could get at through the river. Okay, and to give you an idea how important salt was to our ancestors, the word salary comes from the word salt, and that's how some Roman soldiers were paid. They were paid with salt. That's how valuable it was.
Right.
Okay, so and nowadays, these food manufacturers, they know this stuff. They know that we crave sugar and we crave salt, and but he's right on the way they label things. For instance, when you see something that says sugar-free, you really have to look at the label, because it may be sugar-free, but they may put some corn syrup in there, or some dextrose, or some, stuff like that.
Well, also another thing of concern, and some people may not be concerned. I personally am concerned with the less than stellar track record of artificial sweeteners. And you look at this country with, cyclamates were banned at one point, and there still are persistent concerns with some of the artificial sweeteners that are in common use at the moment.
Right. I agree. Boy, do I agree. Now, there's some people that I've read that I really respected who put it very simply this way. When you go to the grocery store, stay off the chip aisle, because you're right, you can't eat just one. Stay away from the cereal aisle, maybe with the exception of oatmeal. And the interesting about meat, about beef, that I believe is who's the biggest buyer in the U.S. of beef? It's McDonald's. And there's a classic example to where you don't have to own a company or an industry to control it. So when these beef producers, when they make beef, who do you think they're making it for?
Well, obviously, for their biggest customer, McDonald's.
Right.
Yeah, so they understand. I mean, you and I, relatively speaking, buy a relatively small portion of the annual beef produced in the USA. So, of course, McDonald's and their fast food cousins, whether it's Wendy's or Burger King or other items. I mean, you take that category, fast food companies that traffic in burgers, and so that's a huge percentage of the amount of beef that's produced every year.
Correct. I agree. Now, I do some things personally because I love chips. I'm human like everybody else. God, if you put down a bag of chips in front of me, I'll eat the whole thing. So what I do, and thank God for modern technology, is the air fryer. What I'll do is I'll take some corn tortillas, cut them into quarters, and I'll air fry them. It's much healthier. Okay? And I know a lot of people, even some of the frozen foods have a tremendous amount of salt in them. For instance, French fries. So I'll use the air dryer to make my own French fries. Much, much healthier. Okay, now there's some other things that really, really concern me, about the food industries. Number one is when you go to the store and they say, free-range stuff, free-range chicken or free-range, whatever.
Right.
The thing that people have to understand is when they say free range, the definition of it is they have to have access to go outside and walk around, correct? Or run around, whatever the hell they do.
Right.
Excuse me, whatever the heck they do. Now, whether the farmer or the producer does that is up to them. So when they say free range, some of that stuff may have not even ever been outside walking around. It's just that, according to our agricultural people, they have to have access to it. So when our inspectors go out there and they look at the quote-unquote free-range places, they just look to see if they have access to go outside. They don't check to see if the chickens or whatever go outside and things like that. Now, some things that really do alarm me is the first time I walked into a fast food store, I'm not going to tell you the name, but they had apples cut up in a little package, saran wrapping package. And they looked fresh and new and things like that.
Oh, they must have put on some preservative to keep them looking that way.
Well, that is exactly right. I looked at it and I go, when I cut up an apple into quarters or slices, it takes no time for them to start turning a little brown. So I'm looking and scratching my head, and I'm going, how the heck do they do that? And just the other day, I saw a crawler on one of the morning news shows, and I've got it on my computer here now. Scientists find 3,600 food packaging chemicals in human bodies. Now, I haven't done a lot of research on it or anything like that, but that's one of my concerns. So I just wanted to follow up on your last caller. He's right. We got to question all this stuff. And our food lobbyists or whatever, they're the ones, as you well know, that, work with our legislatures to pass certain things, say, well, we got to do this, we got to do that in order to do that. But he's absolutely right. Your last caller, they just make things for craving. So my advice to people is very simple: stay away from the chip aisles, make them yourself. Stay away from the cereal aisles. I like oatmeal myself with some fruit. Stay away from the soda aisles. Soda. Stay away from anything preservative. If you buy a package and have to nuke it, chances are it's probably not very good for you.
One thing I was just looking up, you didn't mention this, but one of the more intriguing food-related, I'll call it a disaster because that's effectively what it was, because in 1996, the federal government approved Olestra to be added to things like potato chips. It was described as a fat substitute, and sadly, for the company that invented it, Procter & Gamble, and sadly for companies like Frito-Lay that were so excited about selling these chips with Olestra, or marketed under the brand name Olean, didn't go well because people had bad side effects. And it's everybody at first was excited. Oh, this is something. You're going to be able to eat a lot more chips without having a downside. And this Olestra, it was a sucrose polyester, was something that was discovered by accident, like most things are, back in 1968. It took till 1996 for the federal government to give limited approval. But then out in the marketplace, before long, after people decide, I'm going to try some of these chips. Wow chips, they called them. Wow. And wow, so people thought, so it's got less fat because of Olestra. So now instead of eating just half a bag, I'll eat the whole bag. And it had, as they say, unpleasant side effects. And ultimately, we didn't hear much more about it. But food scientists in this country and elsewhere around the world are still busy in the lab working to come up with more fat substitutes, more sugar substitutes, more this and more that. And the problem, as research often shows, when sugar substitutes or other types of substitutes are then used in food, then we wind up eating more than we used to. Right. And, of course, one of the things that I like is, somebody will order, 3 giant, what do they call them, half-pounders at some fast food restaurant. I'll have a lot of half... Yep, because they're good. So I'll have some half-pounders. Oh, and could I have a Diet Coke? It's like, right. Okay, I see. You're committed to good health. Anyway, appreciate your call. Say hi to all your friends in Creed for me.
Just a little shout-out to Beverly. I love her. Okay? I love when Beverly calls in. But thanks for taking my call.
Hey, thank you so much, Brian. That's the story from Greed, Colorado, making contemporary news. Hello. Good morning, WNBF. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
To reach you about your Google business listing.
WNBF. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Bob. This is Sandy from Port Dick, and
Yeah.
am I on the air?
Yeah, but you have to be quick because the news is coming up.
Okay. I'm just finding the subject of the food very interesting. It's something I'm interested in. And I just wanted to say that I think our FDA has been slowly not doing their job for the people of this country. If you look at all the manufacturing plants, the beef processing plants that have been shut down or closed for a while because of dirty conditions, because of child labor, they aren't doing their job, for one thing. And I just think there's a big disconnect between the people in this country and the grocery store. People don't have to go to the grocery store anymore. They just call in their order and zip by the pickup window, and they're off. And they don't look at the ingredients. They just buy what they want, and then they go to a fast food place, which is totally bad for you, and a lot of money now. And so there's a big disconnect now with more and more.
I tend to agree. Hey, that's all the time we have for this segment. You can call back later if you want.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It's 9:57, WNBF.
This is Jeff.
We'll be taking phone calls shortly on this Thursday morning. First, though, it's a pleasure to welcome New York State Senator Leah Webb to Binghamton now. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. So, I don't know if you have like a countdown clock, either literally or at least virtually in your mind. I mean, the clock is running till Election Day, November 5th. It's, what is it now?
46 days, I believe.
That's what
46?
about 47 days, I think. But who's counting? But the thing is, it's funny during the election season, at least from a reporter's standpoint, it seems that things then go so quickly after Labor Day. You know, we spend a lot of time talking who will be the candidates. Is somebody going to seek another term? Who will the opposition be? And then, and basically, I think only people in office or hopefuls, along with reporters, pay attention before Labor Day. Now, after Labor Day, people can really get focused on the issues, and in fact, early voting will start even sooner.
Yeah. Yes. I think, there's like a common sentiment about this idea of time where it seems like as we get a little more older, time seems to go by very quickly. But when you think about, all of the issues that we are having discourse about, whether it's here in the region, statewide, or nationally, it's important that our communities are informed and engaging and participating in our communities. So I know it's 47 or 46 days to the election, but I think for me, I think it's important that for our communities, whether you're doing a countdown to the election, that we as a community collaborate and figure out collectively how we can continue to move our communities forward for our ultimate shared progress.
So it was November of 2022 that I think you may have shocked some people in the political establishment with your victory over Republican former Binghamton Mayor Richard David. Some people perhaps didn't see that happening, but you pulled it off. I
have been a lifelong public servant. I've lived in this community all of my life. And I served on Binghamton City Council for 8 years, worked on a number of issues, whether it was around housing, food insecurity, a number of issues. And so for me, that election, even the current election cycle that we're in, is about ensuring that we have leaders who are in every level of government that are equitably committed to ensuring that our community can thrive. One of the things I talk about a lot with our community in the Southern Tier, we have created all kinds of innovative industries. We've made breakthroughs. So whether you want to talk about technology and manufacturing, when you think about companies like IBM that were created here in the southern tier. And fast forwarding to today, with our area being designated as a tech hub for battery generation, this trajectory that we've been on as a community, it's important that we have leaders, and not just simply in government, but across the board in every institution, working together, because there's a lot of talent here in the southern tier, and what we are doing is not only helping to improve the lives of folks in our immediate area, but also the state and in this country and beyond. So for me, it is important that as a community we continue to engage in ways that, again, ultimately are for the progress for everyone.
What were some of the most surprising things that you discovered when you became a senator shortly after your election? And certainly, I'm sure you had a sense of how some things work in the state Senate, the state legislature, and how things work in Albany. But I imagine there was a learning curve, and there may have been a few surprises along the way.
You know, prior to being in the Senate, as I mentioned, I was on city council. I also worked as a community organizer, doing statewide work on healthcare access and education. So I spent a lot of time in Albany doing advocacy. So I think one of the surprising things, or maybe kind of like a full circle moment for me, was going from being an advocate who has stood right outside of the Senate and the Assembly chambers, have met with state legislators, to now be on the other side, actually sitting in the chamber and helping to inform and create policy as an elected. That was a full circle moment in that regard. The surprising pieces when it comes to being a state legislator, I mean, folks may not fully understand, although we're only in session 6 months out of the year, it is a full-time job. You are responsible not only for your constituents in your respective district, and in Senate District 52, there's well over 300,000, but you also have the responsibility of 20 million New Yorkers. And what we do in New York not only is impactful for all of our residents, but also other states look to New York on other policy initiatives. And we are also a big tourism state. I mean, New York is the Empire State for a reason. And so for me, the level of work that goes into being a state representative, it is a full-time job. And I work very hard to ensure that, again, our community has a seat at the table. As
a new member of the state Senate, have you encountered some frustrations? Because obviously, and we discovered this around here in Binghamton after Tom Libbis had served in the state Senate for nearly 3 decades. I mean, obviously, with time of service, you wind up getting more power. He rose to the level of Deputy Senate Majority Leader, and certainly because of his long service in the Senate, that certainly helped for the Binghamton area when it came to getting support, financial support for projects. Is it a little bit frustrating to be one of the newest members of the Senate and perhaps not have that same kind of pull or sway as some of the more senior members have?
I think in any new role, you have to learn the proverbial ropes. But I must say, in our Senate conference, we have a great leader, our Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who works with everyone in the Senate around issues that impacts our respective communities. And so even as a freshman senator who, in my entree into the Senate, we had for the first time ever an all-women class of senators that had ever been elected to New York, to the New York State Senate in its history. And the amount of work that I have done with my colleagues, I've been able to, just under 2 years, I've been able to pass 43 bills in both houses and have 30 of those bills signed into law. And for me, whether you are a freshman senator or you've been in the Senate for 30 years, you have to create opportunities and collaborate with your colleagues. And that's what I spend a lot of time doing. Our Senate Majority Leader is most certainly instrumental in that as well.
There's a perception among some people here in the southern tier and maybe elsewhere upstate that because Democrats control now both houses of the legislature, both the Senate and the Assembly, and we have a Democratic governor, that Democrats, of course, appear to control everything, at least in Albany. And they're also, at least around here, among some of our listeners, it's primarily New York City area Democrats, downstate Democrats that are sort of, because of, obviously, downstate's population, far exceeding the overall upstate population, that downstate Democrats have more of a say in overall policy in the state legislature. What's your response to that perception that upstate residents and also upstate lawmakers don't have the kind of power perhaps that we would like to have?
You know, I can only speak to my experience. I'm very familiar with the narrative of upstate versus downstate on this issue and many other things. The reality is we are one state, and we have varying levels of needs that, whether you want to talk about the impacts of poverty, how it may look in the Bronx or here in Binghamton, there may be some variation, but there's still some common threads. And so in the current Senate, there is a lot of intentional efforts to try to strike a balance with regards to financial investments, but also policies. There are some things that are upstate specific. When you think about geographical diversity, I mean, here in the southern tier, it's rural, it's urban, it's suburban. And so when you have policies that are being created, it is important that they reflect the communities that we're looking to have the impact on in a positive way. So in my time in the Senate, and with, again, as I said earlier, our leadership, that dichotomy is not as pervasive as it may have been, 10, 15 years ago. And at the same time, we also do recognize that each area has its own set of unique needs. And so part of that way in which we're trying to address it, and it's not just in the Senate, it's in the Assembly too, is striking a balance. And also at the end of the day, we're not a monolith. We all come to the state legislature through a variety of lived experiences and communities that we represent. And so part of our responsibility, along with challenge, is figuring out at the end of the day, how are we providing the best opportunities possible for New Yorkers at every city for multiple generations, various geographical locations, and so on?
Speaking with State Senator Leah Webb on this Thursday morning on WNBF, criminal justice concerns are still big, and that's such a major topic. I mean, it can cover to things out on the street. Yet, unfortunately, here in the Binghamton area, we have more reports sometimes of shootings and other violent crimes, although statistically, this area is still quite safe compared to some other cities in New York State. But there's concern. We all have concerns about violent crime and even property crime. There's also a lot of concern about how people who find themselves in the criminal justice system, how they're treated. And some people still have concerns about the changes that were made a few years ago, and thinking that because of changes that happen, that too often people who still have a potential to behave violently, once they're charged, sometimes they're released and might still pose a threat to the community. I'm sure you've heard some of those concerns. Is there, in your view, a need for state lawmakers to revisit some of the changes that were made over the last few years to take into account some of the things that have happened in our communities, whether it be upstate or downstate?
I think, and I'll use this recent legislative session as an example, when the issues around the pervasiveness of retail theft became a center in our statewide discourse, as a legislative body working with various stakeholders, we were able to pass legislation that would not only protect retail workers, but also at the same time address and create accountability for those folks who are engaging in criminal activity in ways that are creating harm. And so at the same time, where you're having accountability and providing safety in this particular instance, we also have to look at what is putting people into the criminal justice system in the first place. I mentioned earlier, poverty is a big driver on a number of issues. And so as a state, through the policies that we have created, it is important that we have not only accountability, but also the manner in which these laws are implemented. One of the other things we've been talking about is the issue of transparency with regards to how people are even interpreting the laws in the judicial branch. And there is discretion that exists with the judicial branch all the way down to our district attorneys. And so again, our responsibility as state legislators is not only to provide protection and accountability, but also create mechanisms for folks to turn their lives around and for everyone to be safe. And so utilizing what we've done in the last 2 legislative sessions as examples, but we have more work to do. And it doesn't just, the proverbial buck doesn't stop at the state level. It requires all of us at every level working together. So that to me is important, that as a community, we have a criminal justice system that, again, provides safety, provides accountability, but ultimately is putting people on a pathway to become productive members of our communities again.
You're facing a challenge from Republican Mike Ziegler, a Tompkins County legislator. What are your thoughts on some of his positions on various issues, and why you believe that you would be a better choice for voters in the district when they go to vote on November 5th?
For me, what I think is important, and this is how I have conducted myself as a public servant, I intentionally create spaces to hear directly from constituents. And for any policymaker at any level, your voting record is a big, I guess, litmus test to give people insight into not only your values, but the work you are doing on their behalf. And so for me, as a public servant, it is important that our communities, especially our community members that are historically marginalized, are centered in the policies and practices that we create. Because when we don't do that, we create even more disparities, and the likeliness of everyone being able to thrive becomes less. And so as someone who also has experience at the local level and being in government, that is something that I understand firsthand in the connection between local government to the state. You have to have those conversations and intentionally work with local leaders. And so that is something I have done and continue to do, not only as a former local government official, but also as a state senator. And so I think it is important for the listening public to know that you have to have leaders that not only take these things into account, but also at the same time ensure that not only that you're being listened to, but you are actively being asked to be engaged in those decisions. And so that is a big difference between myself and my opponent. And so I think it is important, whether it's my election for this particular seat or for anyone seeking office, that the community really looks at all of these things I mentioned and more.
In terms of campaigning in the less than 7 weeks that it remains, do you have any particular need, based on the way things are shaping up, to focus on a particular part of the district? Obviously in Broome County, you're fairly well known because of your service on city council, because you've lived here. Will you be focusing more on the other counties in the district, especially Tompkins County, because your Republican opponent is a county legislator there? Tell me a little bit about, as you look at how you make the best use of the time remaining between now and Election Day.
Well, even before this election, I spend a lot of time in the district. I am traveling around the district every week, whether it's here in Broome County, Cortland, or Tompkins County, whether it's having meetings with various constituents and so on. So for me, it's a matter of not just simply for the next 7 weeks. This is what I've been doing for the last 2 years. And so I will continue to do that because, again, the Southern Tier, as I said at the top of our conversation, I get the opportunity to lift up the incredible work that's happening right here in the Southern Tier. And at the same time, we have very glaring disparities when you talk about the high prevalence of poverty. We have some of the highest poverty rates in the state. Broome County is number 2 in the state for some of the highest concentrations of poverty. So it's become this tale of two communities. And so as a senator, but more importantly, as a concerned community resident, as a public servant, I think it is important that we continue to find pathways forward so that everyone can thrive. And that's what I will continue to focus on, not just simply for the next 7 weeks, but beyond that.
Senator Leah Webb, thanks for joining us in the studio. I hope you'll return soon.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's 10:30. We're live and local, WNBF, serving the community for nearly a century. 92.1 FM, 1290 AM, streaming at WNBF.com. Mary Jo in Endicott, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning. I have a question.
All right. Pose your question.
Well, many people seem to not be able to afford to buy a house these days, and I'd like to know what New York State is doing to make home ownership more affordable and more attainable.
All right. Well, if you were directing it at Senator Webb, unfortunately, she is out of the studio. We just had a one-on-one interview, but no questions from callers. But yeah, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry that.
I'm disappointed.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that'll be an issue that we'll focus on at some point going forward. And who knows? Maybe she's listening. If she hears the question now, she can call in to talk about housing affordability here in New York State. We didn't get around to that specifically, but that's a good point.
Well, maybe I can reach out to her and get that answer.
That's true. That's true. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
1034 WNBF. Linda from Vestal, you're on the air.
Hello. I just heard that the senator is no longer there. I did have a question for her. I was wondering about the checks that we see her giving out all over the place. Her pictures frequently in the papers. I'm wondering where those checks come from. And
well, of course, they come from it's revenue or money that comes from state taxpayers, and then obviously every lawmaker gets a certain amount of money. I'm oversimplifying it, but obviously members of the Senate or Assembly are able to utilize state funds for specific initiatives. And so, yes, especially at this time of year, whether, well, as any member of the state legislature all across New York, you're going to hear more of these awards for various entities, various programs and initiatives. But, of course, it comes from state tax dollars.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering why it's her that's giving them out and what she has done.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question, and but it's true. I mean, notice, whether it's grants announced by the state or federal governments, elected officials frequently will hold news conferences and announce whether it's grants for fire department funding or certainly a high-profile case here in Binghamton just recently was with the $50,000 that was secured by Assemblywoman Lepardo for the Rod Serling statue to pay for part of the statue initiative. So every state lawmaker ultimately does have the ability to secure funding for various programs, whether it's public safety or other initiatives, and then, needless to say, they'll make as many announcements as they can because they want to call attention to the work they've done to support various things in their district.
Yes, and that's what I was wondering, because I have seen lists of the things that she's done, so I strongly suspect she probably did something to get that money allocated to those people.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The thing about whether it's this Senate district or this Assembly district or this congressional district, there are a lot of good programs and organizations and initiatives, and let's face it, there's only so much money to go around, so every lawmaker has to ultimately try to prioritize to come up with hopefully the best and most efficient use of the money that's available.
Okay, thank you very much. I do appreciate the work she's done. I know she has worked tirelessly to do it, so I thought I'd have an opportunity to talk to her, but I got to talk to you, so thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate your call. It's 10:38 at WNBF. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Hi, you're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from? Hi, what's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, DJ calling from Binghamton.
Hi, DJ.
Hi, Bob. What's your 20?
I'm in upstate New York right now.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised you knew what that meant. No, I'm not surprised. You're well read.
Of course, I know.
Yeah, the old CD handle.
I always know what my 20 is.
That's right. The old CD handles. I am happy that she called when she did, my sister from another mister, because she just wrote me something, and I wanted to read it. It's one line. Can I read it to you?
Well, I can't stop you, can I?
Thank you for your dedicated service and selfless commitment to protecting the values of our nation. Your bravery and sacrifice in the Army are deeply appreciated and honored. And I also got the same exact, it's a certificate of recognition. I got one from Mark Molinaro. Was he there, though? Maybe he wasn't there. Early in the morning, and who showed up was Paul Battisti. I'm talking about the Twin Tiers Honor Flight, which I called in Monday about. And Leah Webb, my sister from another mister, whom I love. And I'll tell you something else. The happiest moment in my life concerning Leah Webb, I'm going to tell you about it. But she was on the bus Sunday night when she greeted us all and handed me this, and I was like, oh, my gosh. It was nice. So months ago, you might have done a story on Thorpe Street. Her and some others stood in front of a building, and I hung out at the next building because Thorpe Street was our stomping ground. Thorpe Street was our party place in the 80s. And she got monies to purchase this building. Do you remember that? It's about...
Not offhand, but...
4 buildings down. Okay. It's about 4 buildings down from the beginning of Thorpe Street. It's on the side of... not the side of the old Empire Lumber Company. Some of you haven't been here long enough to know what I'm talking about. It's on the opposite side of the former Empire Lumber Company. She got a... that's the lumber place that the kids burned down. No, you're thinking of the Jungle Gym.
No, the Empire Lumber, the one the kids burned down.
Are you serious? Somebody burned it down when I was gone in the 90s?
Yeah.
I was gone the whole 90s.
Well, I can't help it. I'm not in charge of arson fires around here. I'm just pointing out it was a great place until some kid burned it down.
Some kid burned it down. Yeah.
Well, again, was it really a kid? Who knows? Maybe it was somebody who had problems, but I don't recall anybody ever being arrested for that fire. Anyway, that's not the point of your call. So tell me, what was this thing on Thorpe Street? What house on Thorpe Street?
If you're coming from Danny's Diner toward Jarvis, that's Jarvis. They're doing work on the bridge. You can't go down on the bridge. So you're going to turn right, and the Empire Lumber Company is going to be the back of the Empire Lumber Company. It's going to be on your left side. Leah Webb's building, thank God, thank you, Jesus, is on the right side. You're going to go. Somebody bought it. They have a daycare center. 1, 2.
Oh wait,
3,
I think
4,
I know.
5. Yeah, there are 2 3-story buildings next to each other, Bob.
Yeah, I think
and
I
the
know.
one where, yes, you do know. And the one where we partied at is burned down, and the one that Leah Webb got funds for, which we are very grateful for, and we're not going to talk smack about it, because when I saw her at a Martin Luther King celebration, I said something to her, and it was about her helping those who really, really need. And I'm not saying that Mark Molinaro doesn't do it, that Donna Lupardo doesn't do it. They all try their best to do it. But that touches me because we were the Thorpe Street Demons who had the crazy wild party. So thank you.
Were you a member of the Eddie, or the, what was it, the gang there over on Edward Street, the Eddie Block gang or whatever? Were you part of them?
I left in the last month of 1991 and came back in 2001. For 10 years, I was in Peoria, Illinois. I pastored my second church in Peoria. So you can find me on YouTube. Type in Homer Brink Satan Club, and you'll see me leading a charismatic group. You remember that, Bob? I looked at your story this morning on the web, and you didn't get anything of with me in it. So you're grounded for a month.
What about the Satan Club? Why? Were you a member? You were a member?
Yeah.
Can you imagine DJ is a member of the Satan Club? And it's like, really? Didn't have that on my bingo card.
On your what? Your bingo card.
So I'm looking up the story of the Empire Lumber Fire. It was in May of 2008. And it was a three-alarm fire, and it, as the newspaper described it, it was an inferno. The Inferno.
It was an inferno. What year, Bob? I'll tell you where I was.
It's May 2008. It said some punks set a fire.
2008?
Some punks set a fire that burned down the Empire Lumber.
Punk sets fire at...
No, it doesn't say that. That's me with my opinion. Actually, I should strike that from the record. Maybe it was, for all I know, maybe it was an upstanding individual. Okay. We don't know if it was an attorney or a punk. Somebody set the fire and burned down Empire Lumber.
So,
and I don't think anybody was ever brought to justice. That's as far as I know, it's an open case.
Not yet, but you know what? They will be.
Well, you know what I'm going to say is anybody who knows who set that fire at Empire Lumber, call the Binghamton detectives.
If you see something, say something. 2008 was my second year into doing. I was playing at Greater Faith and Deliverance, and I was doing Christian rock again. So in 2007, I grew my hair long for 7 years, and in 2014, I cut it because I was playing for churches.
All right. Well, appreciate the info. It's 10:44 at WNBF. Morning, you're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from? Thank you, phone company, for doing the best you can. It's 10. Wow. Time is flying here. It's 10:45. More calls are coming up. 607-772-1290. Let's talk about more issues. Binghamton and beyond on this Thursday morning at WNBF.
Hi, I'm Jim.
Let's go back to the phone. 607-772-1290. Dave in Vestal, you're on the air.
It's a beautiful morning, you rascal.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Hey, Bob. I'd like to go back to something that, that's much more important. Gary brought it up this morning, Bob, because if we don't have our health, we don't have anything. And, what I don't understand is RFK Jr., I mean, this is near and dear to his heart. He has expressed that. I read a lot about what he feels about it and his ideas. And what I don't understand is Gary said he won't vote for either Harris or Trump, but he is a fan of RFK Jr., and Trump is going to let RFK work on this subject, actually battle against this, Bob. And, gee, I would think people would come along and joined the Trump train, Bob, just for that reason alone, because like I said, if we don't have our health, we don't have anything. And another important point about it, Bob, is parents need to be educating their children, because no one else is going to do it on this topic if we want to be healthier. And real quick, too, before I go, Bob, I got to ask you, I don't know, you probably don't watch the Gutfeld show at night. Trump was on for the full hour, Bob, the whole hour. It was great, Bob.
Why doesn't he go on the Rachel Maddow show if he's so powerful? How come he only goes on shows that are hosted by his friends and supporters?
You'd have to ask him that, Bob. But you know what?
I'm not going to have a chance to ask him. That's why I asked you. You're as close to Trump as I'm going to get. So you, as a big Trump supporter, I'm asking you to explain to me why he only goes on shows, whether it's Hannity or Gutfeld or whatever, or Carlson. He only does shows with people who are his big supporters. That's one of the problems that I think one reason that I typically don't say if Trump is going to be speaking with Hannity on the radio or TV, or if he's going to be doing something with Elon Musk or Tucker Carlson or Gutfeld. That's one of the reasons I don't usually listen to those things, because it sounds like a complete campaign commercial from start to finish. At least with Rachel Maddow, I'm not saying she's a big supporter of Trump, but at least then you would stand to get some interesting information. These things with his supporters asking the questions, and they obviously it's not a secret. I'm not saying it's bad because they're being disingenuous. No, we know right at the outset. We listen to their programs. We know exactly who they support. But that means I'm afraid that for every one of these shows he does with a supporter, it's not very effective because he's preaching to the choir. Most of the people, whether it's on Fox News Channel or Newsmax or Tucker Carlson's independent show, whatever, I would say more than 95% of the people listening or watching already are guaranteed to vote for Trump. He needs to secure a victory. He needs to go out to venues to reach those who haven't already decided.
But let me explain the difference between the two, though. Rachel Maddow and Greg, Gutfeld's show is basically a comedy show, and that's what I was trying to tell you about. A lot of laughter in there. Even though Rachel is a joke, it's not a comedy show. And, Gutfeld, Trump last night, Bob, you had to see, he let his hair down, every orange.
I don't want to see his hair down. The last thing I want to see is Donald Trump with his hair down. It's bad enough with his hair up.
One quick story he told, Bob, was when he was in office, pilots came before him and explained to all these different shaped UFOs, objects that were flying alongside him. And Tyrus, who's on the show a lot, Bob, asked him, now, if we determine that there are aliens, are you going to put tariffs on their ships in our airspace? Now, stuff like that, Bob, it was fun. Yeah, you had to see it. It wasn't serious. Some of it was.
Well, it wasn't XM either.
But, Bob, no,
it's again, my point, he should start going on some shows that aren't operated by people who are clearly his supporters. It just doesn't work. I am not going to listen or watch that most of the time. Now, every once in a while, I think last week when he was on with another... See, that's the other thing. For his friends, they all call them exclusive interviews, and it's like, oh, yeah, if you're a friend, you can get an exclusive interview. But if you're from any kind of an organization that is not already signed on and all aboard the Trump train, you're not getting an interview. So what's the point? It just sounds like an infomercial at that point. It sounds like that the two people, the host and the candidate, are just old drinking buddies, even though Trump doesn't drink. We'll just say buddies who hang out at the golf course. That was another thing. I was listening to Hannity yesterday, and he's saying, oh, yeah, I was going to go golfing with Donald Trump, but I didn't. It's like, you're too close, Sean. You're too close to the candidate. Yeah, we get it, and you love being close to the former president, and you love supporting his campaign, but there's no pretense of ever asking any kind of an independent question.
But I agree with that, but before I go, one real quick story you'll get a kick out of. It was funny that Trump told. They asked him, how do you separate? Because years ago when he met JFK Jr., JFK Jr. was suing him, had a couple lawsuits against him. And they said, how do you separate them? So, talking with people, having normal conversation, or actually being friends with people. He goes, it's tough, but you have to do it. If I didn't do it, I wouldn't have anyone to talk to. I thought that was funny.
All right.
Wow.
Well, sorry I missed it. It's 10:55 at WNBF. I was listening to quite a bit of Hannity yesterday because he's talking with some guy who was golfing with Donald Trump the other day. And the thing is, was it yesterday or was it Tuesday? I don't know. You probably heard it. You listen to WNBF all the time, so you heard it. I heard it too, and I'm thinking, like, come on. It just sounds so contrived. It sounds, I'm not saying it's scripted. It just sounds like it's scripted. It sounds contrived. It sounds like from noon one day until 6 a.m. the next day, it sounds like one giant echo. I'd like, just for one day, put Rachel Maddow filling in for Hannity. By special arrangement between Fox and MSNBC, or by special arrangement with the radio syndicator, let Rachel Maddow fill in for one day without telling Donald Trump. So Trump is scheduled to be on the program, whether it's Hannity's radio or his TV program. And then he finds out at the last second, as they're setting up the feed, that actually Rachel Maddow is filling in, and have her ask some questions. Make it interesting. And the same for Kamala Harris. The next time that she is scheduled to do an interview, maybe with MSNBC or somebody who is perceived to be on her side, then bring in Tucker Carlson to fill in. Get somebody to make it interesting. Good morning, WNBF. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, my name is Ebony. I'm calling from Binghamton.
Morning. What's up?
I wanted to call and thank the Senator Webb, so much for helping get the funding for Roosevelt Elementary School.
And thank you for mentioning that. We didn't bring it up during the interview, but that I know was a very big issue for her and for people on Binghamton's north side.
It sure was. I have a fifth grader who goes there, but, if the school had got shut down, there would be a lot less traffic and people moving around on this side of town, and that's what we need to kind of get it back up and revitalized again. So I'm just very grateful that the school will be there for the neighborhood and that it's going to get the improvements that it needs.
Thank you, Ebony, for calling in.
Thanks for having me.
10:57, WNBF, Binghamton Now. More coming up. On the air at 92.1 FM, 1290 AM, and streaming at WNBF.com. We're going to pack so many calls into this program between now and noon, it could make the phone company spin. Hi, WNBF. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Gary from the South Side.
Morning, Gary. What's up?
Good morning. I'd like to run through some quick stories that are quite making the news that people may be interested in. The Republican Senate Budget Committee bill will cut $1.5 trillion from SSI over 10 years. According to Sheldon Whitehouse, the chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, anybody on Social Security might be interested in that. Vance is going to open to privatizing Veterans Affairs, health care options, and fire thousands of federal civilian jobs, including within the VA.
Who wants to do that?
J.D. Vance.
Isn't he the vice president? Or will be the vice president in January, apparently.
Yeah. Well, this is part of the 2024. But there's also this story that's floating around here. I think it's really important. Stephen Miller, he was the guy that worked for Trump, and he was with the border, separated the families. That was his deal, Stephen Miller. But they want to deport 20 million, okay? 20 million, but there's another thing they want to do, and they have it, it's called the denaturalization. And there's 25 million people that are naturalized citizens. They are citizens now of the United States. And a lot of them are doctors. A lot of them are dentists. A lot of them work at UHS. A lot of them work at Wilson. And he is going to throw them out too. And with his combined immunity.
Oh, I can't believe for a minute. Maybe that's a typo.
No, this is according to Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor under the Obama administration, also the UN Ambassador and Director of Domestic Policy Affairs, but it was also discussed by Joe, Morning Joe today. It's for real.
Well, on MSNBC, I missed it.
It's called, it was a very, very short talk about it. But it's Stephen Miller. It's called the Denaturalization Program. And he said it will be turbocharged when Trump comes back in office. So everybody that is a foreigner, whether you're a U.S. citizen and you went through the process, whatever, you are, and there's 25 million of them on top of the other 20 million, that's 45 million that he is going to, he said he's going to deport at will. So, and this is for sure. This is for true. It's you can check it out. And that's some scary stuff right there.
All right. Well, I appreciate your calling it to my attention. I can't believe Stephen Miller would try to stir up that kind of controversy again, but I guess that's his stock in trade, just trying to stir things up. Trying to stir things up and make life wacky. It's very weird. Stephen Miller. Although I do like his song from the 70s, The Joker. 11:14 at WNBF, WNBF.com. Well, America, our long nightmare is over. Interest rates are now starting to come down, finally. And even the White House seems to be pleased with the announcement by the Fed that interest rates now are coming down.
It is obvious. That we have seen interest rates have fallen, that inflation have fallen, and so I'm going to let the Fed obviously speak to more specifics about their decision, their monetary decision. But we have seen inflation going down. I think that's important. That's important to the American people.
Hey, it's a victory, a major victory for the American people, as inflation is being brought gradually under control. Good morning, WNBF. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, my name is Steve. I'm from Binghamton, New York.
Hi, welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I wouldn't care about what that guy said about deporting too many immigrants. That does not include the people that are professionals. The reason why I'm saying that, he's getting that information from the left, and I don't believe anything from the far left. That is a bunch of bull crap, and I don't know why people are saying things like that.
Do you think they're just trying to sway votes away from the Republican side of the ticket over to the Democratic side?
Absolutely. I really believe that. Yes, that's true. Unless I see it myself, I'll believe it. But if it's in black and white, if it's coming from the left, I don't believe anything what they say.
All right. Well, I appreciate your calling in and sharing your view. Anything else on your mind?
There's probably quite a few, but I'll probably call you tomorrow.
Okay. I'll look forward to it. Hope you have a great day.
All right.
11:16 WNBF. All voices are welcome. You, too, are allowed to participate if you want to talk about the issues This is an issue-oriented show, and we have talked with people who have noticed over the last few weeks this show is sounding better than ever. That's what the people are saying. That's not a direct quote, but generally speaking, from talking with people who listen to the show on a regular basis. Some listen maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Some people listen every day of the week, but they've noticed how much better the show is now. As they say, new and improved. Binghamton Now. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Bob. This is Bonnie from the South Side.
Good morning.
I've been listening just this last hour, and this last caller kind of implied that the information that the previous caller had given you was not true and was just coming from the left. But I think I'm not mistaken when I say Stephen Miller is part of the Trump organization. He was very involved with Trump, probably in his cabinet. I'm not 100% sure about that one. But he was very involved with Trump, so the information's coming from the right, not from the left. But,
oh, yeah. I'm looking right now at the MSNBC website, and in fact, right at the top it says, Susan Miller, and the quote is quite terrifying. I misspoke. Susan Rice reacting to the so-called turbocharged deportation plan, and she said it's quite terrifying. So it's right there. I'm looking at it. It's on my screen in front of me.
Right, and it's coming off of one of the Trump go boys, I'll call them, for lack of a better term. But one of them is causing this information to come out. But I did want to talk about what I really called in. I was listening, but I wanted to call in and talk about, there's a lot of information, too, this morning about health care. And it's interesting to me that there isn't more support for women's health care in the United States. Trump has taken away women's rights for health care when he took away Roe versus Wade. But I'm flabbergasted that there isn't more discussion about women's rights and women's health care.
But why do you think that is? Because in the United States right now, there are about 3 million more women than men. So women make up the majority. So you would think that women's health care would be on everyone's mind. If men are in the minority, whether they believe it or not, the numbers bear that out. Last check, about 168 million women and only 165 million men. So you would think women's health care would be top of mind.
I think it is for a lot of the women, and I think they're going to give a push to the Kamala Harris ticket. I think that's going to come. Somebody said
that they were trying to get the word out to women that, say, your husband or your boyfriend or your significant other will never know how you vote on November 5th. I've seen that being put out, and I'm wondering if that's part of like an organized or just a subtle effort to try to encourage women to vote a certain way in this year's election, knowing full well that how they vote is a secret. They don't have to tell anybody who they vote for.
That's absolutely true. But I think there's a lot of women coming out in support of the Kamala Harris and Tim Walz ticket because they are not taking away women's health care. There's too many stories out there of what has happened to women at various hospitals. And then just to follow up on that, it's interesting in the Project 2025, they're going to take away 45 million folks off. They're going to kick them off of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. So I don't know why we have this conversation about health care when we're not serious about health care, because Trump is not serious. He's taken health care away from people. I don't care. Veterans are going to lose a lot of their benefits. Women are going to lose a lot of their benefits. Affordable Care Act is going to be I don't know what the word is, disintegrated. Maybe that's a good word. They're taking that off. I mean, they're not. This isn't even a serious discussion for Trump supporters because they don't care about those people. They care about themselves maybe, but they don't care about women, veterans, or people that are on Obamacare.
Appreciate your call.
You're welcome.
11:22 on WNBF. Everybody can call in. Do you have a phone? Don't worry, it won't explode if you call 607-772-1290. Complete satisfaction, virtually guaranteed. If you aren't guaranteed with the way your call goes on Binghamton Now, you can take advantage of our full money-back guarantee. Everything you paid will be cheerfully refunded. 607-772-1290. It's Thursday with Bob Joseph on Binghamton Now. 11:24 for the most calls in America. Vinny from Binghamton, good morning. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Bob. Hey, listen, I wanted to call back in, call in today actually to say a thank you and an apology to you. Somebody brought to my attention after I got off the other day, and Vic from the Forks called in, and Vinny was loud and angry, and why didn't I say this about the comedian held the head of Donald Trump up and said, well, the reason I'm angry is because I might have sounded loud and angry because I'm fed up with this. How can I say it, Jen? Go in the bathroom on me or on us and then tell if it's raining. We're sick of this wishy-washy stuff from the other side. We had two callers that called in this week that talked about, one really talked about tone down the rhetoric. And then the next Trumper called in and talked about the person in the left cult trying to assassinate Donald Trump. And then you got Donald Trump just the other day talking about, first he says, Kamala Harris called me. And she said, I wanted to see if I was all right. Yeah, she did. I thought that was really nice. Then turns around and says that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the ones that are setting this up so that I get assassinated. That's what I'm sick of. How can you try to be sensible with these people? And Rita from Binghamton called in yesterday, Bob, Johnson City. I'm sorry, she's from Johnson City. And she said it's so clear. We never had this when Obama was here. We never had this when Clinton, George Bush, HW.
We never had this. In my lifetime, we never had this. We've never had this type of division in this country in my lifetime. Now, I can't speak about how America was during the Civil War. It very possibly was worse, probably was worse, although we don't have recordings. But I got to say, what we've experienced now over the last several years, it's shocking. It's shocking, the level of discourse being brought not only to the lowest possible levels, but even once you think that nobody could go any lower, they go ahead and they find a way to lower the bar. And that's what I'm concerned about between now and November 5th, Vinny, is that somebody is going to lower the bar even further. I don't know how, but they're going to manage.
They will too, Bob. And there's three things I love talking about. I love talking about businesses, these corporations. Which Bill O'Reilly, if he comes on this program and starts talking like he did the other night, oh boy, he's going to be in trouble. And
that's the thing. I think, that's why he hasn't responded to my request. I think even though he believed everything he said during the Newsmax interview on Monday evening, he's afraid to say it in any other venue. Even now, he's probably getting all sorts of blowback from some of his primary supporters saying, Bill, how could you have gone on Newsmax of all places and said what you did? Whatever you do, don't repeat that. Hopefully Newsmax will delete the clip. But that's one reason that Bill O'Reilly, as great a man as he is, especially for a guy who got his start in TV at Channel 16 in Scranton, I think ordinarily he'd come right on. But I think he's been advised by the people who run the money side of his operation, don't do that again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to say this too. I could go on and speak to Vic, but during that Republican convention, there's one person I wanted to see, one person I wanted to hear what they had to say, and he came on right after Hulk Hogan. and that was Franklin Graham. And I really wanted to hear what he had to say, because he's going to bring the right is talking about we should be a Christian nation. And he's talking about this man, we need Donald Trump. When he was tried assassination attempt out there in Western Pennsylvania, and he hit that floor, and he rose up with his, and I'm just listening to this man. He said, this is the man that's going to bring us together. Really? Really? I said, I just, Bob, it's this whole thing has such a biblical overtone to it. How this man is going to bring, you think this man, besides Nikki Haley, can't do it? Chris Christie couldn't do it? Mike Pence couldn't do it? You believe this man can do it. And you got to remember, these problems in our country, they did not happen overnight. Donald Trump did not happen overnight. This man has always been this way, all the way back from looking for the death penalty to come in. The death penalty took out a page. I think it was Newsweek or whatever that.
No, it was New York Times. It was a full-page ad in the New York Times, wanting the Central Park Five executed. Turns out all 5 of them were exonerated. Charges dropped.
Yeah, and now he's pro-life? On this then? I'm pro-life. Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Thank you, Vinny. It's 11:30. WNBF Binghamton. Vic from the Forks. Good morning.
That's a tough act to follow right there, Bob. Good morning. Hey, I just want to answer one question. I actually could answer 2, but I'll answer one question to Vinny that he just proposed. Why? What Trump is doing, he's bringing both parties together, Republicans and Democrats. And I don't think Vinny sees that, because there are Republicans and Democrats who do not want to see Trump get elected, because Trump has threatened over and over again to drain the swamp. And that swamp is full of corruption, and that's why there's people from both parties that want him dead or not be president. Now, that's all
Most people, in fact, virtually all people, want him to stay alive and to enjoy the next 30 or 40 years in good health. So, to imply that there is a significant number of people in this country that don't want Trump to be alive and don't want him to lead a healthy existence, regardless of the outcome of the election, I mean, that's a false narrative.
Well, stay off of TikTok then.
Well, I'm not on TikTok. Why would you be on TikTok, Vic? But, talk about the putrid swamp for the people who are concerned about the swamp, and then you go on TikTok? Come on, man. Stay off TikTok. I think it's probably run or owned by a Chinese company. Maybe it ought to be shut down. It's definitely not the place for you.
The only reason I go on TikTok is to read the comments, not...
Oh, come on, man. That's crazy talk. You read it, or you go on TikTok because you love what you see there. Be honest. You love what you see.
But
it helps to fuel your ongoing anger at the opposition.
The reason I called is because the lady who called before Vinny, I didn't catch her name, and I don't need to mention it anyway. She talked about Trump not doing anything for veterans. I want to say this to that lady. I'm a veteran, and I happen to be a wartime veteran. And about 3-4 years ago, or right after Trump got elected, so it's sometime in 2016, I was working on a bridge that I was building going across a creek on my property. And my son tossed me a shovel. And I caught that shovel with my right hand, and it was an old shovel, and a sliver went right down between my thumb and forefinger, and it went deep. I went to the walk-in clinic. They x-rayed it, and they said they can't pull the sliver because it's hitting a nerve on the thumb, that I would have to have surgery. That surgery cost $6,000. My cost of that surgery was $2,400. Medicaid or Medicare, I don't know what I'm on. I'm retired, but they picked up the rest. Since Trump put his care for veterans, go where you need to go into place, I've been hospitalized with COVID at zero cost. I was hospitalized a couple months ago with a heart episode at zero cost. I can go to any doctor in Broome County, and the VA will pay for it. It doesn't cost me a thing. And that includes dentistry. I get free dentistry, too. I just had 2 bridges that it cost $14,000 put in my mouth, and it cost me absolutely nothing at the dentist. And Progressive Dental did a great job. I just have to throw that in there. But the veterans are very well taken care of. And I think Trump did a lot who were struggling to survive. He cut taxes for the middle class, and of course he cut taxes for his friends. Like you said,
of course.
When he told Hillary Clinton, "You put these laws in place, why not take advantage of them?" So you can't blame people for taking advantage of the law. That's not a sin. So quit making it out to be a sin.
Well, maybe people didn't say it's a sin. Maybe they just thought it wasn't fair. There's nothing sinful about taking advantage of tax breaks that are put into place by one of your buddies. Of course, look, if one of my buddies put a tax break in place, I would take advantage of it. It's not a sin.
Exactly.
But it wouldn't be fair. These tax breaks that are unfair to a lot of middle class or lower wage Americans, it's not sinful. It's just unfair. Hey, it's just that. And I know some people are like, too bad. Too bad. Why don't you? Here's the awful truth. The awful truth, America. I hope you're sitting down for this. A person who is from the middle class or a person who is from a lower income bracket will never be elected president of the United States. And they're not going to be elected to Congress, and they're unlikely to be elected to the state legislature, and they're not going to be elected to be governor or mayor. So if you think that anybody at the local, state, or federal level is going to look out for your interests more than they'll look out for the interest of themselves and their rich friends, well, you can dream on, as Aerosmith might say. It's not going to happen.
You want to level it so that people like you and I can run for president, and all these monies collected.
Sure, Vic, I want you to be able to run for president. I want you to be the Republican nominee in 2028.
Well, I don't think I'll be around in 2028, Bob. I'm 70 years old. I'm getting
yes, you're going to be around. Speak positivity.
That.
Yes, I'm going to be around in 2028. I'll proudly accept the party's nomination.
Well, I think I would make a better president than both of them.
I think you would too. By the way, that is not an endorsement. I'm not endorsing you for the presidency, but I do believe that somebody like Vic from the Forks would be a better president than the 2 major party candidates right now. And by the way, I didn't say that either of them is not a good person. I believe in both cases, the Republican and Democratic nominees are constantly proving that they're doing the best they can.
Well, in closing, I would like to say there's been a couple attempts on President Trump's life. It seems that both attempts were done by one guy voted for him in 2016, but he switched over to the Democratic Party. The other guy was a Democrat. And I noticed that after he got shot, nobody was calling for gun control. But if somebody...
I call for gun control. I call for gun control every day, so doesn't take any specific violent act involving a gun. There needs to be better gun control. I don't know what the answer is, but clearly too many people who have no business having guns have access to them. So don't think for a minute that I don't want steps taken to prevent troubled individuals from having access to guns, whether they wind up attempting to harm a stranger or possibly harming themselves. Too many people who are troubled and really should not have access to a gun can get a gun right now.
Weren't the last 2 attemptees, weren't they both felons? Weren't they both...
I don't know. I'm not going to do a deep dive into the background of the people who've been implicated in those acts. I'm just saying that on any given day, there are too many people being killed in America because of guns, And it's clear that there's no political will to get something done about it. As far as what can be done about it, I don't know. But clearly, very little has been done over the last few decades, and I submit to you that little will be done in the next 10 years in America. So at least you can say the elected officials are consistent.
Well, Trump did bring the Republicans and Democrats together, the ones that run the swamp, because they all want him out. So he did do that. And if we don't elect Trump, we'll never know the bottom of the swamp.
Well, we're never going to get to the bottom of the swamp, Vic. Never. He had 4 years to get rid of the swamp. Didn't happen. 4 more years attempting to get rid of the so-called putrid swamp. It won't work. It didn't work in his first term, and if the American people hire him for a second term, it's not going to work in the next 4 years either. The swamp will be as putrid as ever. 11:39 at WNBF. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Harry from Kirkwood.
Hey, what's up?
Well, for your information, Bob, we do know that this last guy who tried to kill President Trump is a felon, so you didn't need to do a deep dive for that. All you had to do is get on the internet and look and find out about it. So,
yeah, and your point?
My point is, well, here you're saying I'm not going to do a deep dive on all this stuff. Well, you don't really have to do a deep dive. Just get on the internet.
Yeah, your point. I have an internet like everybody else does. What's your point?
Well, that's my point right there. Okay.
All right. Well, he made his point. 1140 WNBF with Bob Joseph taking calls. Do you have a point? Yeah, I have the internet. Speaking of the internet, I don't think I mentioned today about WNBF.com and some of the stories that you may find useful or interesting. First, we have an update on the future of the IBM Endicott collection. We haven't heard anything for several months about this, but we are following some things, and I will say there are some things happening now behind the scenes that could pave the way for the return of the IBM collection to Endicott. So take a look at that story, illustrated with fine photos, by the way, of what had been the IBM collection on Washington Avenue, including some of the photos from January 8th when the moving van pulled up in front of the place and they were carefully packing up all the stuff to be taken to a warehouse in Poughkeepsie. So take a look at that. The future of the IBM Endicott collection. There is, as Donald Lapardo said, there is some state funding that could be available to help support a build-out for a new location for the IBM collection. And as far as I'm concerned, I hope the location that is chosen will be in Endicott. I know exactly the location where it ought to go. Stay tuned and see that story, WNBF.com. The other story that we've been following with some interest is that old Giant Market. Remember the abandoned supermarket site on Main Street on the west side? Giant used it for quite a few years, and then for about 5 years, Wise operated a supermarket before they pulled the plug. So it just sat there for about a decade. Well, as we previously had reported, the First Assembly of God in Binghamton acquired the property for $1.5 million 3 years ago, but people have said, why don't we see stuff happening? We don't see much going on with the project because the church said it was going to move from downtown Binghamton over to the west side. Well, we did post an update about the project at WNBF.com, so take a look. See for yourself. So there is some progress. There's not a whole lot to see outside, but there is a little something going on inside to be sure. And see that story only on WNBF.com. It's 11:44. We'll take some more calls on this Thursday morning. Remember, you're listening to Binghamton's very best radio station, Binghamton's first radio station, WNBF. The most fun permitted on the AM and FM bands. Martin from Binghamton, you're on the air.
Yeah, about Stephen Miller there, and you called him kind of weird.
I take that back. I apologize. I hope you weren't offended. I should not have called Stephen Miller weird.
Absolutely not. But there's an addendum to that. I think he's a creep. Sorry, with the capital CR. I mean, my God, you ever see this guy and how he talks? I mean,
I have. I actually have. I've seen him on TV. I've heard him on the radio. I've watched him online. I trust me. I know who I'm talking about. But I'm still sorry for saying he was weird. That was really wasn't very nice.
Well, you're the host, and I understand that. You got to stay in the middle, but I don't have to. And but anyway, he's talking about getting rid of exporting millions of immigrants, even doctors, surgeons, professors, et cetera. I mean, my GP retired a few years ago. And I have a new one, and I was waiting for him to come in the door. He walked in, and he had some kind of Muslim headgear on, whatever. And it wasn't like he was being pretentious or nothing about it. He was just calm and collected. And I told him, you know what? You wear that proudly. God bless you for that. You know, like somebody said before, where the hell would this country be without these immigrants, without these doctors and their nurses, and all these people of the Muslim and Buddhist faith and stuff. And it's just, not everybody wants to be a Christian, but it's, my opinion, that's just bizarre. That's just how alarmist that he is. But he would. I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, if they could do it, they would do it. Look at the plan for 2025.
Well, that 2025, Donald Trump insists he doesn't have a thing to do with it.
Well, I'm sure his fingerprints are all over it.
Well, I'm sure, but he still says, and I'll tell you why he says that, because he knows that if he gets linked to 2025 too often with too many commercials and too many people calling into talk shows between now and November 5th, it means he's probably going to lose again. And this time he could lose by more than 8 million votes. So that's why he wants plausible deniability. That's what it's called, plausible deniability, to keep saying in public, basically, 2025, what's that? Is that the song by Zager and Evans? Or something like that, and roll his eyes and make it sound, Project 2025. Oh, I've never read that. Come on, man. You mean to tell me that a guy who wants to be president, I bet even Kamala Harris has read Project 2025 probably from start to finish, so at least she knows what it's about. I know she doesn't support it, but you can't tell me that Donald Trump didn't read it, or at least thumb through it. Maybe he didn't read the whole thing, but he at least has perused it, so he knows what it's about.
Yes, he does. And,
Wouldn't it be funny if he called in right here at the end of the program and said, Bob, I don't have much time because I'm planning for my next interviews with Dan Bongino, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, and Tucker Carlson, but I do have 2 minutes to tell you that, yes, I know exactly everything about Project 2025. I didn't write it because I don't have the ability to write at that level, but friends of mine and supporters of mine did write it, and I am proud of what they've written, and I think it's a good project. And then he would say, do you have, I have time for 2 questions. I'd ask him, say, my first question would be, are you telling the truth about this? And he'd say, yes, I'm sorry that I didn't tell the truth to begin with. Then he'd say, I've got time for one more quick question. I'd say, did you really ever have a Speedy? Because you remember that on the program. He still he insisted on this program. He had a Speedy and he liked it. And to be honest with you, I can't fact check that in real time. Some people told me afterwards, after they heard him on the radio, that, that wasn't true. And it's like, I don't know if it's true or not. I can't prove it. He might have had a Speedy and he might have liked it.
Yeah, he might have. I mean, anything.
Yeah, anything's possible. I'm not saying that everything he says on the radio is not true. That might have been that day. It might have been 100% accurate. So I'm not going to criticize or castigate him for saying he had a Speedy and liked it. He may very well have.
But can you imagine what the hospitals and doctors' offices would look like if you were to remove all these doctors' names that are from Middle Eastern descent, and what we would have, what the healthcare would be like? I mean, they are probably the leading surgeons and professors and of all these things in society that we need.
Well, you think it takes a long time now to get an appointment with a specialist. Imagine what would happen then. If you needed an appointment with, whether it's a general practitioner or a specialist, add another 6 to 18 months before you get one around here. You'd probably still have to go out of town.
Yes, exactly. I'm basically a Lourdes guy, Guthrie kind of guy, and it's like, but they don't have, because my last Melody I had, they don't even have a nephrology department, and it's over at General Hospital for the kidneys, and they're inundated. I mean, I'm lucky I can only get in like once a year, but they took me in on short notice. The other day, and what a great doctor, and certainly a Middle Eastern descent.
Yeah, you're doing great work. Appreciate your call. I hope you have a good day.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob.
It's 11:53 at WNBF. Oh, what's this from the back of the rack? Donald Trump, Mr. Trump, joining us from Florida. Good morning.
Good morning, Bob.
So, how are things in Florida? Cool.
They're going, despite global warming, there's a major cold snap, so Florida's very cold, and that's okay. Cold means like 50 as opposed to very cold. You'd love to have 50 up in Binghamton, I know that, but...
I love it. By the way, have you ever been to Binghamton?
Yes, I have, many times, and, I went to camp. It was a camp called Camp Hilltop, right near Binghamton. Did you ever hear of Camp Hilltop?
I have.
And I went there when I was a little boy. I went to Camp Hilltop for 4 or 5 years. So I do know your area. People are shocked to hear these little things, but...
Do you have fond memories of Camp Hilltop?
Really great memories, yeah. I had a good time. I was there probably 4 or 5 years. And my family, the kids went to Camp Hilltop. We liked it.
Really?
We went there for a 2-month period where we actually stayed there. It wasn't like a back and forth. It was we would be staying there for... a 2-month period. I think it was 2 months, and it was great. I learned how to play baseball and all of the things. So I have very fond memories of it.
Yeah. Have you been back to Binghamton recently?
Not recently, but I know what's going on. I know it's tough. It's very tough, and it's very sad because there's no reason for it to be tough. It's an amazing area, but it's not being handled properly. There's no question.
It's the birthplace of IBM, just to our west here in Endicott. That's where IBM got its start. But IBM basically pulled out about 25 or 30 years ago. There's just a handful of people left from where Thomas J. Watson started the place.
It's very sad. There's no reason for it. Very, very sad.
One final question. You mentioned you had spent some time here in the Binghamton area in your youth. Did you ever have something called a Speedy?
I did have a Speedy, but you know what I really had? I had a good time up there. The air and the I don't know, the woods. I just have had, there was a lake that was so magnificent where I learned how to swim, actually. You know, people are shocked to hear this. I don't know if I've ever mentioned Camp Hilltop very much, but that's where I went. For years, I went to Camp Hilltop, and it was just beautiful territory. And it still is beautiful territory. Unfortunately, now it's going through a very bad period of time. There's no reason for that to happen. Everything can be brought back in New York State.
Donald Trump, my thanks to you. If you ever make it to Binghamton, you're welcome to stop by here. Hope we speak again. Thank you for your time.
Deal. Thanks a lot, Bob.
It's Donald Trump from Florida, right there on the radio, although apparently that was pre-recorded some time ago. But you heard it. He did. He did have a Speedy, and he liked it. That's our program for today. I'm Bob Joseph, a friend to all with Binghamton Now, here on WNBF.